CO2. Thank you.
Well, I hope you hold strong on that in Indonesia, because I'm going to Bali next year, and I don't want those beaches all messed up by this, that, and the other. Do I see a student? I got a whole group of students that always hang around the back so they can get out early. We
They're just
actually
waiting
serve
for
wine.
the food.
Yeah. Do you have a question, any one of you? Good. Absolutely. You're getting an A for this, so.
Okay, so I had a question about the revenue neutral carbon tax. My first part of the question is, when is that tax collected?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
The revenue neutral carbon tax, how is that tax collected?
How is it? Oh, that would be part of the proposal. The question is, who's going to pay the bill? Is it going to be the actual emitter, or is it going to be the people who supply the fuel? For example, if we talk about the coal-fired power plant, you could have the coal mines, the people who supply the coal pay the tax, and an alternative is you could have the power plant that does the emission pay the tax. I leave that to the people who are more politically expert than me. I think the most complicated issue in a revenue-neutral carbon tax is, how do you return the money? Yeah. Think about the problem. I said the Southeast runs its electrical system on coal. So if you put in a carbon tax, their electricity rates go up. The Pacific Northwest runs it on hydro. Their electricity prices aren't going to go up at all. Okay, so what's the fair way to return the money? And I have to say, not just fair, but a politically acceptable way to return the money, looking at the fact that doing it, although it sounds simple, has quite disparate effects on different parts of the country. I'm going to leave that to our esteemed senators and congressmen who are doing so well in working out compromises these days. But one of the things that we want to do is we want to try and get at least the themes in the hands of whoever is elected right after the election, because they're going to be forming policy then, and they're going to be putting new people in places, and we want to get them thinking right. It would be even better if we got them into the hands right after the conventions. I ran a study by the American Physical Society on energy efficiency, and our target was to get our report at the beginning of September in 2008. Remember, the conventions were quite late in 2008. And although the presidential candidates didn't read it, their staffs did, and both the Republicans and the Democrats wanted the report, and we could see some of the themes in various speeches, but the most important thing is we never had anybody say anything that would get in the way of higher efficiency later on. So we're going to keep trying, and I hope we'll get it out soon. But as I say, the target is at latest right after the election, and it won't be detailed then. It will just be the broad brushes, because whoever is elected is going to want to put their own stamp on the details.
I'll ask you an embarrassing question. One of the nicest things that happens to me when I go to France, which is all the time, is I go on a train that is just marvelous, a TGV, at 220 miles an hour, racing in this direction, wonderful comfort. And I'm wanting to live just long enough to ride that same train from San Francisco to Los Angeles. But I'm told that many people on the peninsula, people in Palo Alto near Stanford, don't want that train to cause any noise or rumble by their house. So there's always this problem of how to get a very developed area of this country onto new technologies. What are you opposed to a fast train? Do you think it's a waste of money?
I've also ridden the TGV, and if you recall from your last trip, when it runs out of Paris, it does not go at 200 miles an hour. As it rumbles out of Paris, it's on the normal train tracks, and it's traveling like a normal train. And if the train's a high-speed train from San Jose to San Francisco travels like the trains we have now, maybe a little bit faster, there isn't going to be any trouble. If the authority wants to do what they've talked about, which is to put in a big high viaduct sort of dividing the peninsula in two, there are going to be huge objections to it. I would just start the thing off when you're running in the highly populated areas. Run at a reasonable speed, not at 200 miles an hour. By the way, the German trains go even faster than the French ones do. You like the French food better, I know.
I noticed the Dr. Hatcher didn't ask you any questions about the internal combustion engine running on natural gas or propane, or could you address that situation?
Yeah, in fact, there is or was a car. It's a Honda Civic something or other. It's got some letter on it, which ran on natural gas. You can run an internal combustion engine on natural gas with only minor tweaks in the engine. Biggest problem with it is the storage of the gas, because the tanks that we have available now take up most of the trunk room, and so people don't like it. It also hasn't been a big hit. At the beginning, a few years ago, there was a company that actually made a compressor which you could hook up to your domestic gas line. And you could hook that up to the domestic gas line, hook it up to your car, and the thing would sit there at night and simply fill it up with 5,000 psi natural gas, and then you could go run 200 miles on the car. The technology's there. Question is it acceptable to the average driver? You see a lot of buses now that run on natural gas. You see these things with these funny-looking tops on them. Those funny-looking tops are gas cylinders. And it's easy with the buses because they don't go very far. They have a fixed route, and you gas them up at the end. I think it's a good thing, and one of the things I'm going to talk about at the next meeting of the Energy Research Advisory Committee is what are they doing on more effective storage tanks for natural gas for vehicles.
Two quick questions. Is there ever going to be a technology to take CO2 out of the atmosphere? And what is the state of hydrogen energy production? Is that going to be something within the next couple hundred years?
Answer to both is maybe in the next couple of hundred years. Taking carbon dioxide, direct air capture, the technology is such now that it's frightfully expensive. It's equivalent to a carbon tax of something like $1,000 a kilogram. It's not going to happen until something comes along that can do it a lot cheaper than that. As far as, what was the other thing? Hydrogen. The big problem with hydrogen is the fuel cells that you use. Making hydrogen is not that big a deal, although you'd like to do it more efficiently. But the fuel cells are not that efficient, and they use so much platinum in their catalysts that the entire world supply of platinum is only good for 10 million cars a year, and we have more than 10 million new cars a year in the United States. So there are scientific issues. Can we make a better catalyst to make a better fuel cell so that the fuel cells are more affordable, more reliable, and more efficient. That's probably getting more money than it ought to, because they made this commitment, which I thought was rather strange, to hydrogen fuel cells. I don't think it's going to be a winner, but I give them credit for keeping trying.
I was hoping you were going to say that in a secret laboratory underneath one of those aqueducts that the fast train is going to run on, instead of running underground, that you have this laboratory that is now going to tell us soon that hydrogen has in fact been split, and therefore we will have it as a source for the future replacing nuclear. But you don't have that laboratory underneath your office in Palo Alto.
The government has a program which is looking at direct conversion of sunlight to fuel. So this is not photovoltaic cells. This is to take sunlight and biological processes and have the outcome be a high energy density liquid fuel. The nice thing about liquid fuels, they have a huge amount of energy per kilogram and a huge amount of energy per unit volume, much more than all these gas sources do. So there is, I forget what the program is called, I think it's Sunshot or something like that, and it's a program where the leaders are the California Institute of Technology and the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. It's just gotten going. Is it going to work? It is at the science stage now. So the first question is, scientifically, how do I do this? I'm going to have to genetically engineer some bugs to do this. I'm going to have to do other things to use the sunlight efficiently. After I get that to work, I now have to say, is it scalable? Can it grow to be something very big? And the scalability is an important issue. You've heard a lot about algae to make biofuels. People I've talked to say it's not scalable because it requires too much water. And so if you're going to try and produce a large amount, you're going to use a huge amount of water. And in California, that's a no-no. And in most of the United States, it's going to be a no-no. So we're a long way from having a system which is going to deliver a fuel from sunlight, whether that fuel is hydrogen in some completely new type of container, so I can drive 200 miles on something the size of a small suitcase instead of something that fills your trunk, or whether it's going to be a high-density liquid fuel that's produced by some bugs assisted by sunlight in some sort of who knows what, I don't know. But one of the things that the Department of Energy is doing is it has started to link the science part of the DOE with the energy part of the DOE. This energy hub, the Sun Fuel from Sunlight hub, is part of the Office of Science in the Department of Energy, not the energy efficiency and renewable energy part. They keep track of what's going on, because if it works, they're going to have to take over on industrializing and scaling up. So the answer is a big fat maybe.
Gotcha. All of my science friends always tell me maybe. And with that, I'd like to say that this is that magic moment in time when we are serving wine out in the reception area. And I want you to join me in thanking Burton Richter for coming up from